Thank you all for joining this session of the Ask the Expert. I hope most of you or some of you have been also in the previous webinar about the CDI best practices. And I think we have received really good questions during this session and afterwards in all of the channels. And this session of the Q&A is actually based on the question that we received. And we prepare the answers and we will go through them. And of course, as Scott says, we have the Q&A, and if we have time at the end of this session, we will answer more. And afterwards, of course, we will answer any question that we will have in other channels. Okay, so let's begin with the first question. I chose this question for the beginning because it actually goes back again to the basics that we tried to review and cover in the webinar. Actually to understand better how KB and CDI work together, and this helps us to explain this again. So the question is, do KB resources and CDI articles match? In other words, everything that is in KB is also in CDI and vice versa? Okay, so the answer is basically yes, they match. They work together as we explained, and the KB holds the title level metadata, such as journals, and the index holds the article level metadata. So the articles within those journals. So I think we actually mentioned this example. So for example, we have a science magazine, and we will have an entry for this in the KB with the ISSN, and in the CDI, we will have records for all the articles published within Science magazine. And the collections, of course, in the KB are reflected also in CDI. But as only part of the KB has coverage in CDI. In the KB, we have in all of the KB, the knowledge bases products, we have approximately 45,000 collections, which are providers offering providers products, and only part of them are covered in CDI, which means that they have coverage in the index. And why is this? And it's important to understand. The KB is an electronic resource management tool, and it stands alone, and it actually existed before the central index was built. And as we know, not all of the providers can supply article metadata in good quality fit to the discovery needs. So in the KB, a provider can send the metadata, the title list of the journals or the books that they sell. But for the CDI, what we request from the provider is rich article level records that will be be able to ingest into the index, and users will be able to use them to find what they need. So we need a really good and rich records, and not all providers can supply this. And of course, that all the top providers and the commercial providers, and most of them do send feeds also to the KB and also to the CDI, and we have full coverage for them. But in the KB, we have a long tail, a very long tail of providers and content contributors, and for some of them, they're represented in our products only on the KB world, in the title level or as a collection, but not in CDI. In addition, we need to remember that some of the KB collections are supplied by providers who do not send their discovery content to CDI for indexing. We all know that we have EBSCO that are presented, of course, in the KB, and our users can activate what they need. And they also can discover results from CDI, but this is based on alternative coverage because we have a really good coverage for EBSCO from other sources. But still, the coverage is not 100% complete sometimes, and it's not coming from the provider. So this is on this direction. I mean, the KB coverage on CDI. But on the other direction, how much of CDI is covered in the KB? For this, the answer is 100%, of course, because in the world of CDI, of single activation, we have to have a representation in the KB for any CDI content. If it's not in the KB, it does not exist in CDI because nobody can activate it. As the KB, ALMA, SFX, and 360 is the access point for CDI in the single activation, so the CDI feed need to be represented in the KB. Sometimes we do not represent it as a full text collection, selective collection with titles, but only as database without titles. And this can happen sometimes because the provider cannot support title list, does not send it, or maybe the content does not fit is not working in a title list. For example, if it's an ANI collection or some other collection which is not really working in a S classic collection, but still we will have representation and we have database or collection that customers can activate in order to see the CDI content. And when my team or our group actually ingest a new content, so let's say we have received a feed from the provider and we load the records to the index, we will not release it to customers, to users, unless we have the KB collection in place, and then we release it. Also, when we release collections and we announce it in the release notes, we point on the ALMA or SFX or 360 collection that can be activated in order to see these CDI records. Okay, let's proceed. Question 2. This is also talking a little bit about the KB CDI relationship, but more about the descriptive feeds, the in-CDI indication. So why is it that some electronic collections of a particular publisher are available for CDI search activation in ALMA, while other electronic collections of the same publisher are not available for CDI search activation, even though they are partially have the same content? Example, journals at Ovid available for CDI search activation, but journals at Ovid LWW Total Access Collection 2021 is not available for CDI search activation. In these two examples, the complete electronic collection is available for CDI search activation, while the partial electronic collection, whose titles also are available in the complete electronic collection, is not available for CDI activation. And there is another example here from Wiley. Okay, so we will explain how this available for CDI search activation indication works. As I said, only part of the collections in the KB have this indication. And for them to have the indication, we need to have several conditions. First, they need to have the DBID. The DBID is the identifier that actually links them to the other KBs and to CDI. And based on this, we actually calculate the rights and we calculate the coverage. And second, after we calculate the coverage, our threshold is 80%. So we need the collection, if it's of course, if it's a selective with titles, to have coverage above 80% of the titles to be presented in CDI. And the coverage calculation does not happen automatically, okay? And we currently can update the collection based on the coverage on quarterly basis. So what we do, we have actually a process that checks the collections on the KB, the titles, and compare them to CDI index and calculate the coverage. This doesn't happen automatically, and we cannot actually, currently we cannot update the collections right after they created. So for example, in this case, we had 21 collections that the CDI coverage of them was not updated yet. We are working to automate the process and make sure that new collections created are getting the accurate CDI indication right after they created. This is a work in progress. I hope that we will make a progress soon in coming months. Anyway, already next month in April, we plan to refresh the CDI fields and to align as many as we can using the calculation, the coverage calculation that we have, the new one. And many of the collections will have the correct indication after this refresh. And of course, that the end game here is automation. When right after collection is created on the delivery side, we actually can update the CDI status right away. Okay, let's proceed to the next questions. Question 3. There are collections which have metadata for the same resources exactly in the CZ and the CDI, but in CDI, there are better, fuller, and richer metadata. For example, Henry Stewart talks, why can't you use the same metadata for both the CZ and the CDI? We prefer using the CZ metadata because we can also control it, edit it, selectively decide to deactivate some records, etc. And because often these collections in the CDI works with linked record as opposite to via link resolver, and therefore does not contain our proxy. Okay, so this is also a really good question, and I think this is a really good example in a case that demonstrates the complexity, and I will explain. So ALMA CZ, Multirecord enrichment, and CDI indexing are two separate procedures with different feeds. Okay, we need to remember that the ALMA and CDI are different databases. Of course, they work together, but they're different databases, and they're using different feeds. CDI is more flexible and can use many formats. And I think I mentioned in the webinar that we can use XML, we can use Excel, we can use flat file, and many more. But in the ALMA world, the enrichment process is actually aimed to work with Multirecords. And we need also to remember that while the CDI, the discovery, the CDI records and feeds is aimed for discovery needs, and we need to have rich records there. In the ALMA, the purpose of the enrichment is more on the cataloging focus for the internal use of the library. Of course, these records do publish to Primo, and they can serve the discovery. They can use for discovery purposes. I mean, users can search on them and they find what they need. And this is very good because we actually give more options to the libraries. And we, as you know, like for example, when it comes to books and we have overlap between the ALMA offerings, the ALMA level record, the ALMA records and the CDI records, and we are offering the way to our customers way to decide which records they prefer, if it's the ALMA or the CDI records. However, we do we have two different feeds here. Another thing that we need to remember is that the ALMA CZ mark enrichment requires a separate legal agreement from that of the discovery. So sometimes the feeds do not align, even if the provider has mark records. So this is another step in the road, another thing that we need to work through with the provider is the legal agreement for each feed. So when we're discussing with the content providers, of course, and when we do it on the best practice and we start things over with them, of course, we encourage them to supply their highest quality metadata, both for CDI and ALMA CZ. We do want the provider's content to be represented in the products in the best way. It means CDI in the highest level and ALMA CZ in the highest level. But still, we have a misalignment, and sometimes the content in CDI is better in ALMA, although the source is marked and it can be used in also in ALMA. Okay, let's proceed. Okay, so this is a question about the hybrid databases that we mentioned in the webinar as a future plan. When a hybrid database contains some full text, some citations, and Exlibris receives some indexing records and some linking records to full text, what will be the full text linking in CDI be in ALMA? So the question here is about the descriptive fields. We have several descriptive fields that on CDI on the ALMA collection, the full text rights, the linking, and of course the type. And I believe this question is mostly about the linking. What percentage of records will be the criteria in the determination? How will catalogers know in ALMA which databases are hybrid and which are not? Okay, so as I mentioned in the webinar, later this year, we will start using hybrid in linking and other ALMA fields, easy CDI type and full text rights to describe collections with mixed hybrid functionality. And when I say mixed hybrid functionality, so let's refresh our memory. We're talking about collections which have some of them is an ANI records, which means they do not have links to full text on their platform, and some of them do have links to full text on their platform. Currently, on the current situation, we need to choose. We need to choose if we're doing it link resolver or link in record, also on the rights and also on the linking. If we do it link resolver, it means that we're losing the direct links. If we're doing it link resolver, link in record, I'm sorry, it means that we are showing records with links to citations in first search as full text available, and also that we're giving a direct links that actually directs into citations and not to full text. So for this reason, we will try to use the hybrid functionality, and here I am answering to the first question. So the CDI fields of CDI type, full text rights, and linking will have the value hybrid. Okay. If now, for example, in linking we have two types of linking methods, link resolver and link in record, we will have a third one which is hybrid. And the functionality here will be hybrid, which means the records with direct link to full text will behave as any other full text collection with link in record, which means all the records will show as available and direct link to full text will appear. The records which do not have full text, they will work as any other ANI collections, which mean the records will show in first search only if they have match to holdings files. If they have match to holdings files, which means they are available, the full text is available under other subscription of the customer, they will show as available in first search, and the user will see the collection available on the ALMA to see the full text. If they do not have match in the holdings file, they will not show as available, but only in a second search. This will happen, as I said, later this year. Currently we're aiming to Q3, and of course we will do it one by one, and we will explain how these collections work in the release notes. Regarding percentage, we haven't finalized it yet, okay? But I would say that we will focus on collections that, as I said, there is a value also in the direct links and also in the ANI data. And we will not use the hybrid functionality for collections that are actually ANI, but a really small portion of them does have direct links, or in the other way around, full text links, full text collection that some of them do not have the links in the records. We will try to really find the collections that give value for the customers, and that the functionality here will work the best for them. Okay, question 5. We have two questions about open access. So let's start with the first one. What's the lower cutoff of hybrid open access designation? So again, we're talking about the descriptive field full text rights, which currently have 4 values. In the ALMA, we have subscription collection level, subscription link resolver, open access, and partially open access. So we will use open access if the collection which means the CDI records of this collection, contains 95% of open access content as reported by the content providers on the record level. We need to remember that we are relying, as any other metadata, as all the metadata and the indications on the records, we rely on the provider indications on the source, on what we get. So our threshold here is 95%, which means that we will continue to, we will keep it as open access, also if we have specific cases or specific records which when the content is not open access, actually, because the majority of it is open access. Also, sometimes we do not get the open access indication on the record, but the provider assures us that their feed is 100% open access, and then we need to, of course, to take the word and mark the collection as open access. In cases where some of the records have the open access indication and some do not, we will use the partially open access indication. We still do not have many collections like this. I would say about 2025, and it's basically collections that used to be open access on Primo Central, and now in CDI we actually have a refreshed feed or a slightly different feed, and we have also not open access records in this collection, and for this we use the partially open access indication. I want to say here, note that when the provider does not indicate whether the records are open access, and we have many cases like this, or we can find that it's not reliable enough, and also when the provider does not send CDI records at all, and we actually use alternative coverage, we cannot always give an accurate indication in ALMA. It means the best thing happens when we actually get indication. We get the feed from the provider here and here, and they match, and we say, the provider says, yes, this is 100% open access, and all the records are open access, and this is good. But sometimes it doesn't match. For example, I had a case this week of a collection called freely accessible journals on, I think, social sciences. And this is a collection of about 2,000 titles, journals, which are freely accessible. So this is a KB product. It doesn't have a provider, commercial provider stands and support it, but it is a KB product, a legitimate KB product. And of course, that indication on the collection level has to be open access, okay, because it's freely accessible journals. However, when we look on the records are coming from alternative coverage. Okay, there is no provider to send us records, and the records vary. Okay, we have records from multiple providers, and each one indicates it differently. So in this case, for example, although the indication on the collection level will be open access, we cannot guarantee that indeed 100% or 95% of the records will be open access. But of course, we want the indication on the collection to be accurate as possible, and subscription collection level is, of course, a wrong indication in this case. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the partially open access collections. The question here is, libraries still shouldn't activate this unless they're sure they have subscription access to the non-open access content. Otherwise, when the proxy prefix is applied to the non-open access links, they will produce easy proxy login errors, as the resource won't be in the library's proxy config file. Okay, so first, we would say, and we put it in the documentation, that partially open access collections should be treated with caution because they can cause problems with linking. But after this this statement, I would say that when it comes to commercial collections, which means there is a provider, commercial provider, who sells content, and he has a product. They are selling some of the records are freely open access to non-subscribers, and to some of the records you actually need to purchase subscription to see the full text. In this case, we'll do what we can with the provider to split the collection, and have a standalone open access collection. So customers that are not subscribing to the content will be able to benefit from the open access records. Of course, in coordination with the provider, we cannot do this on our own. So this is when we talk about commercial content. But most of the partially open access collections are not commercial, but they might be institutional repositories where the non-open access records are actually restricted for staff only in some cases. I mean, there is no subscription, but they're restricted for the staff of this institution. Or in other case, where they actually do not have full text, but they are only of citation. I mean, the data that is in the platform is not the full text, but only an abstract page. So in this case, it's indeed partially open access, but it's not that you actually need an authentication in order to see the record, but it's not open access and it's restricted by the institution. And here, again, we recommend to do it with caution and to think if the value that you gain from these collections is worth it, of course. Now about the easy proxy. So we're talking about linking record collections. And we have in Primo and Primo VE the option remove proxy prefix for open access links. Okay. So when the remove proxy prefix for open access links option is enabled in Primo VE, only records with open access indication will not have proxy. And records without open access indication will continue to have proxy. So the common scenario here is, I would say, off-campus users. Okay, so they sit at home, and we all seen it in the last year, and they sit at home and they are using the library services, and they find an open access record that they want to see. So what we want is we do not want to force them to log into their library in order to see the full text because it's open access. There is no need. We want to direct them to help them go directly to the open access without using the proxy. So this option is working on the record level. So for example, if we have a partially open access collection, part of the records has open access indication and some do not. For the records with open access indication, the easy proxy will be removed and the user will not need to sign in order to see the content. In non-open access records, and the proxy will still be on the link and to help them actually discover what they need. Of course, in any case of not working links, or in cases that the indication is not correct and causing the link to break and so on, we'll be happy to get cases and check and fix any broken link or any case that you encounter. Okay, so these were the two questions about open access. Okay, let's continue. We're having a number of false positive access reported in Primo VE for CDI citations with known article resource types like miscellaneous and reports. Most often, these are the results of broadcast activations in ALMA. Is this a broader issue than our cases? And can you comment on any resolution in the works? Thanks. Okay, so thank you for this question. The question is yes. Okay, yes, we are aware of false availability and results. And this is coming also from Proquest collections, but also from other collections that act the same and actually share the same problem. So, so first I want to say that we do focus on this issue as a major issue that we want to fix. And we have plans to the short term and the long term, and I will explain. But first I want to understand what's going on. So the reasons for this vary, but I want to focus on the most common scenario. And in most cases, this happens when we are using link resolver linking for records without identifiers, and we rely on title match. So in these cases, you will get the records as available in the brief view because the activation is using the collection level rights, what we call selective false, or we subscribe to only parts of this title is not checked. So the records do come up as available, but when the ALMA trying to find the link to the specific records, it is using a title match because it doesn't have identifier, and sometimes it fails. So the title match is sensitive. It's sensitive because we have two directions here. On the one hand, we want to make sure we link to the correct title, so we're doing the match accurate as possible. But on the other hand, we also need it's a textual match, and the textual match, as we all know, needs to have some fuzziness and some looseness to enable us to really work with different KBs and connect between different KBs and databases and do the match. So what are our plans here? We are working, the content group and the CDI product team are working really hard on this. And in the short term, what we plan to do is align and match the CDI and ALMA titles within specific collections. It's actually, we're checking that the CDI and ALMA titles are matched as much as we can, and we locate all the mismatches to make sure that when we do title match, it will have it will do the match and the link will work. In the long term, we are reviewing several other options, and we have several ideas and directions to proceed. We do want to improve the rights calculation and linking for these collections, and actually make sure they're accurate without the need to maintain and make sure that the titles do match all the time. And of course, I want to remember to remind that we're working with providers' content, and providers' content from not from one provider, but the titles are many times generated by several providers. So of course, the match here has additional challenges because of the different sources that we get the data from. And for this, we're actually exploring ways to make the rights and to make the linking better, and if possible, without doing the title match. And the work is in progress, and I believe that you will be able to see the change and the improvement in this area soon. And of course, I want to say that it doesn't say that you need to stop and reporting us and pointing on any a broken link or problem that you see. Of course, the support teams are working as always to correct and fix records, or if it's a broader issue, we fix all the records to make sure that the links are working accurately. Next question. How does Exlibris decide whether a CDI collection is link resolver versus linking record? Okay, so as I said before, we have two options, link resolver and linking record, and the decision here is based on the provider and what they support, and I would also add here the sales model sometimes. Basically, so if the content can be found on several platforms providers, and it has high quality metadata which can support open URL linking, we will configure it as link resolver. So the benefit of the link resolver, as we know, is that it enables the users to do the match between records and more than one collections or targets in the KB side, which means that it does not force them to see only one link, the link that is provided by the metadata source, but they can actually discover, they can use the metadata in CDI and see all the platforms that offer a full text for this specific institution. And this is the benefit, but the linking here is relying on OpenURL, which for OpenURL to work good in high quality, we need high quality metadata. So when we look on a collection or on a feed, we need to make sure that first, there is a good reason for us to make it link resolver, because it can be found under more than, if possible, under more than one platform. And of course, we are checking very good the metadata of the records that will provide reliable links. In addition, and I would say here, we need to make sure that the provider actually support the OpenURL linking to their platform. And they give us the syntax or good links that we can use to build the OpenURL by them. Now, if the content is relatively unique to one platform and its content will not work well with OpenURL linking due to the nature of its content or insufficient quality, we will use link in record. So, of course, when I say nature of its content, so of course the CDI index has much more than classic articles and classic books. We have newspapers, we have archival materials, we have reports, we have standards, we have a lot of other content types that not all of them are working with reliable identifiers. And also with the content which is classic, as I said before, sometimes the quality is insufficient. So in these cases, and when we see that the content is relatively unique to this platform that provide the platform, we will use link in record. So the link will be reliable on coming from the record, but will be only one. Not written here, but of course, a note about this, the sales model. Of course, when we are talking about, and here I'm talking about the rights calculation, not about the linking, but when we're talking about a collection that is sales, enables selective subscription, of course, we need to enable our customers to do the rights calculation on the link resolver, on the title level, and not on the collection level, actually, so they can actually use the selective subscription. But also here, we are relying on the metadata because the rights, the title level calculation has to be done on identifiers. And if the provider will not support this, we will not be able to support the selective subscription model. Next question. Can we use OCLC vendor records for titles without CKB numbers in an electronic collection in ALMA? And CDI will still know which titles to provide access to. So the answer is yes. And I think this is the power of ALMA as a resource management tool that, of course, when customers are working on the IZ, they can use the CZ to copy collections, to copy titles, to copy portfolios, and use the CZ portfolios, but they can always create the local electronic collections, titles, portfolios, and use them. If it's from the provider feed, provider records, or from OCLC. But still, they will be part of the holding file that ALMA sent to CDI. ALMA is sending holdings files to CDI on daily basis, and this holdings files is actually all the electronic titles or the electronic holdings that the institutions is declaring by the activation that they have access to. And this holdings file is going to CDI, and all the rights calculation process in CDI is done on these holdings files. So if the institution created a collection, local electronic title using an OCLC record, even if it's not using the CZ title, it still has ISSN coverage and all what we need in holdings files to calculate and check on CDI which records match to this electronic title. And when we do the match, we can actually show them as available in the UI. Okay, next question. Somewhat recently, we're starting seeing CDI records where the source is listed as ALMA SFX local collection. What exactly is this source and what kinds of records does it include? Okay, so this question is actually covered in the documentation, CDI documentation, but I would be happy to explain again that a collection created locally in ALMA and that have portfolios that are published in CDI to CDI for discovery, as we actually explained in the previous question, or that have no DBID mapped in ALMA SFX appear in the UI currently as ALMA SFX local collection, because the collection name cannot be matched against the KB. And maybe before we actually read it again, let's remember that where we actually see this ALMA SFX local collection, because maybe not all of you actually encountered have seen this on the UI. So on the UI of Primo, we have two places you can see this. The first one is the source on the PNX when you do full view, and the second is the collection facet. And we need to remember that the PNX source and the collection facet are pointing to the activation source, which means the reason for this CDI records to appear. I mean, the KB activation, the KB collection, that its activation caused to this CDI record to appear, as we explained during this rights calculation. So sometimes when we have when the source, the activation source is a ALMA CZ collection with DBID, we actually can match it against the KB and CDI, and we know exactly which collection was it, and we can show it in the source or in the collection facet. But when it's a local collection or a city collection that doesn't have DBID, and later on we will talk about some examples of this, CDI will not know which collection is it. I mean, on their side, they will, on CDI side, we will not have this collection in the KB because it's a local or because it doesn't have DBID. And in these cases, we will return ALMA SFX local collection. So this applies, for example, for local collections with journal portfolios, as I mentioned before, or for consortium packages from the CZ. Also, the consortium packages from the CZ, sometimes they do not have DBID. And for this reason, the database, the CDI, I'm sorry, will not have the match for this collection. We need to make it clear that functionality speaking, the rights and the records will show. I mean, as I mentioned before, in the local collection, but also when we're talking about consortia packages from the CZ, the journals are published. I mean, the electronic titles are published in the holdings files, and CDI records are searchable and do appear in the UI. But when we talk about the source and the PNX and the collection facet, the value here would be ALMA SFX local collection. Okay, I think we are, this is the last question. So we'll answer this and then we can take some questions that came up during this session. So the last question here is about the rights process. So what is the current turnaround time for updating the rights between when a collection is activated in CDI and when its contents are visible in filtered searches in Primo VE? Okay. So ALMA publishes the institution's holdings files daily. This is part of the implementation process, and this was part of the enablement and move to CDI process. And in each ARM environment, there is a job that actually takes the holdings files and publish it to the central index. And the holdings files are entered into the rights calculation process in CDI, which, as I said before, CDI takes the holdings files and mark all the records that have full text available according to this holdings files as available. The rights process takes now around up to 72 hours, and we are aiming for the CDI rights update to be completed within 48 hours. This is one of the known issues in CDI, and it's published on the documentation of the known issues. And the goal of the development team, they're working on it very hard as we speak. I know that they're trying to find a better way to calculate the rights and to find, I would say, even creative ways to handle this huge amount of data in shorter time. And this is a development task, as I said, to gradually improve the rights processing procedure to meet the 48-hour target. So I don't have actually timeline for this, but I believe this is an ongoing process. Anyway, so let's say you've done activation change on your ALMA. The best way is actually wait 72 hours, and then the records or the change will take effect. The records will appear or disappear on the Primo UI side. So thank you all for joining, and thank you for the questions. They are very helping us to aim and to focus on what's important for the customers, also in the documentation and the future webinars that we do, and also in our plans for the products and for the content that we ingest to the products. So thank you, and please do not hesitate to answer and open cases when there is need. We're here for you. Thank you.